You are live.
Thank you.
Okay, I'd like to call to order the, what is today? July
Ninth.
9th meeting of the Isle of Palms Planning Commission, and acknowledge that the press and public were duly notified as in accordance with state law.
Them too.
Yeah. So the first item on the agenda is the approval of last month's minutes. Do we have a motion? We have a motion from Sue. Any second?
Second.
Got it, second. Any comments, corrections, modifications? If not, all those in favor say aye.
Aye.
And any opposed? Motion passes unanimously. So it doesn't look like we have any new business, but we've got old business of our recommendations on the matrix. I was out in the sun all afternoon, sorry.
Oh, so do,
Can you read it, Kim, or you read? Looks like everybody has.
barely.
Yeah.
You
Yeah, barely, but I'll take. So, were we going to get comments from council?
On the comp plan?
Yes.
Yes, we have two so far. I think that their deadline may have been the council meeting. I don't know. that they're-
Council or last night?
I think it's council, I thought.
Okay.
It was either workshop or not.
We have two sets of comments back.
Oh, can we get this?
Sure.
That way we can just kind of start, instead of hitting it whole.
Yeah, getting them piecemealed a little bit.
If that's okay with you.
Absolutely.
You can protect innocent and keep the names hidden.
Yeah, I can do that. One is electronic, one is hard, so. So the matrix, ready to talk about that?
Yes, sir.
In your packet, I think this is all of the recommendations that are on the planning commission's table to look at, have been assigned to you. We have started with all of these recommendations, starting to try to kind of track the status of each. We put in green if we think it is underway. So of those that have been assigned to you, the staff felt like of the, say, 20, that we could say 4 were pretty actively underway and being dealt with. There's a lot of other ones that, are long-range, aspirational, not quite like things like purchasing flood-prone property.
So the light green is also underway?
Yes, yep. Yeah, it looks like there's 2 different greens, but all of the greens are underway in some. So I think I would ask for the group. We have update and enforce zoning ordinances. We then have update zoning ordinances for redevelopment. That's pretty closely tied. I think we were tempted to turn that one green, but there's clearly a difference there. One is, I think, universally all zoning ordinances. One is specific to redevelopment. From my perspective, when you tear down something that's old and you put in something that's new, our ordinances at that point require that you bring it fully up to code. I do think that there's people that have the perspective, well, if you tear something down, you're tearing down an old little house, you're replacing it with a much larger house, kind of the net effect of that is negative. But I do think we feel like it is made, a redevelopment is actually made fully compliant. So that's no different than a vacant lot that gets developed. So that's kind of a point for discussion. I think we would feel comfortable turning that green, but wanted to get your feedback on that. Also, the two above that, explore recommendations for zoning retrofitting setbacks for new construction. So really there are pretty fine distinctions between all three of those.
What was the last one you said?
Explore recommendations, so it's.
It's number 5.
Yeah, fifth one down, explore
Yeah, I feel-
recommendations
I
for
just-
zoning retrofitting setbacks.
So you
I
could,
just did a Susan and numbered all of them.
Yeah,
It helps.
we should've done that.
it
Yeah.
does help. You could, yeah, as long as we worked out the redevelopment, you could combine those two and say they're underway.
Was when I kind of went through and was marking them up before the other day. The first two you did, the update zoning ordinance for redevelopment, and I took that one as being that's ongoing, so I was using whatever changing it to whatever.
Green,
Well, you're using the term green. They said in the chart that sent out, there was a category called maintenance at the that was not used in any of these, but I thought this should have been changed to it's a maintenance action, that it's done, it's ongoing, we have no action kind of for that.
oh, yes, okay. So in that type of recommendation, exploratory, actionable, is there a maintenance? Is that the column you're saying there's a maintenance choice?
Yeah, which column is it?
1, 2, D, C or D?
I think it's D, explore,
Type of
yeah, type of,
Type of recommendation.
recommendation,
One of the options there is maintenance.
maintenance, which was not used in our list, but
Yep.
I thought these fit into that. It's not something that we have processes in place that deal with these
Yeah.
things that are ongoing, so there's no change to be made. I guess it's in the processes that we already have.
So are you advocating for which one of those are you saying should go to?
So update and enforce zoning ordinances,
Number 7.
Yes.
and then
Number 10.
update zoning ordinance for redevelopment, goes back to yours.
Yep.
We
Number
already
7.
have ordinances dealing with the redevelopment.
Yep.
And I think we do a periodic review of them.
I think it's called the comp plan, and that's
Yes.
what I had noted, is in a lot of these, I think, in the broad overview, 5, 7, and 8, we kind of deal with it in the comp plan and some of the future visions that we have set out for some of that.
Well, then so to that end, your list also has the comp plan recommendations. So if you were to look down at the bottom, you've got, I'll call it 22, which is 2 up from the bottom. Make appropriate amendments to the zoning ordinance which reflect the goals and strategies of the comp plan.
Mm-hmm.
Right above that, monitor the amount of impervious surfacing. That one you will have really kind of just focused on with your
Yeah.
stormwater. One right above that, amend zoning ordinance to limit the density of development allowed on property not serviced by a public wastewater system.
Or in there.
That one we've,
So we were talking about that earlier. So the comp plan where this came from was again 2018. A lot of this stuff got addressed
between the two.
between there and then now, although we did not go back and do a rewrite of the comp plan because we were just doing a review. So we didn't take them out. So I think that's how these got left in there, but again, like you said, it's already addressed, so yeah, I'd mark that one too as a
done.
maintain.
Do we need to take all 7 of those and make one line?
They're pretty closely, unless somebody has a distinction among, I mean, some are kind of specific to redevelopment, some are specific to stormwater, some are specific to the sewer system being tied in, so they're all kind of nuanced differences between them. But I think from my perspective, the group has looked at each one of those 7 issues kind of separately and addressed it, maybe not in the last 6, 8 months, but within the last 2 years. And additionally, Suzanne, for the comp plan editing, maybe as we're updating the comp plan, we update these goals that are in the comp plan to something other than, to more of a maintenance language than a do
Right.
language as part of that update.
Much like what we've done, I expect that future planning commissioners and council people will see different needs as things change in the market. So I think it is a maintenance item from that perspective. And I really felt like 13 and 14 really were, no, I'm sorry.
I got that.
13.
12 and 13 were support commercial development only within the parameters set by the existing zoning regulations and consistent with the city's established character as a residential community. And then 13 read, encourage business development commensurate with the needs of the local community. I think the market pretty much dictates that to some extent, short of our, stopping Disney from coming in through zoning and other things that we obviously do.
I'd mark both of those as any of them because, like you
Similar.
said, we have commercial zoning ordinances and we enforce them.
Yeah, we don't have an option to not. They're not optional.
Yeah.
Correct. So that's just kind of I put those in, and that, a lot of that's addressed in the comp plan similarly for the future of the community, basically.
So any objection, that is now 9 bullets.
So,
And if you've numbered them, it's 5, 7, 10, 12, 13, 19, 20. Oh, 21 was already, and 22. Any objection to all of those being green and in the maintenance kind of category?
I'd put a question mark about the zoning. I personally don't think, I think our 10-foot.
Which number is that?
Number 5. Personally, I think our setbacks are good,
Okay.
but I didn't know if everybody agreed.
Oh, I certainly do. Because I have to deal with them all the time. And there's one that was also just like it for retrofitting and/or for redevelopment.
Yeah.
Yeah.
5 and 7, there's really no difference.
I mean, yeah, I think we're
It's the same
familiar,
set of
but that was my
parameters.
only question, was everybody at the table in agreement that they're sufficient, we don't,
Right.
I don't want to, if somebody has a valid argument, I want to hear it, but.
Right. Or if anybody has a complaint, the question about reviewing setbacks and things like that, well, is there somebody in particular who thinks their house is, another house is too close to the property line or something? 'Cause-
Did we do number 19?
19 I have starred, so that's,
Okay, all right.
that's in the, what I'm calling
Green.
9, but maybe
Maintenance,
it's 8, because maybe one of them's already green. Yes, 8 new stars. Everybody okay with those going green?
5, 7, 9, 10, 12, 13.
5, 7, 10,
Okay.
5, 7, 10.
12, 13,
Mhm.
19, 20, 21's already green, and 22. And we'll clean this up.
Go green.
Yeah.
So, let's see, where'd you go?
Other, so I had marked 2, which I felt like there wasn't really, and these are, I didn't know that there was anything that we could do on these 2, so I guess I put them in a category of, and maybe the color for these would be yellow or red or something that we,
So,
I would say the end of docks.
Oh,
I don't think that we can legally, the state statute names that the old OCRM, that is their purview. I don't think that we legally can regulate the ends of docks.
oh, I just had a big question mark on that one.
Depends on which end of the dock.
Huh?
Yeah.
I'm presuming that.
Well, that's over the
they're talking
marsh.
about the water end of the dock, not the.
That's number 17. I would say that one is probably a good, if we had that authority, I think it would be a good thing to pursue, but I just don't think we have that authority. And the other one was the
Which one?
buying of flood-prone property. I think that's another, number 11. I would say that those go kind of a yellow, like we, and I don't know what the status is, but we have also added a column that will give a little explanation of why the color change, what's going on that's led to the color change.
So 17, which they had marked already as an exploratory, I kind of looked at that one as, that might be something worth sticking on our agenda and us spending 20 minutes brainstorming, and then,
Okay.
future, this didn't seem like a high priority thing, but that's kind of how I was envisioning something like that would be, okay, we'll, in a future meeting, we'll stick it on the agenda and see if there's anything that we throw out ideas, and if we can't get any traction, then we're done with it.
Well, how about, and I guess back to the point of, I think that this is a state issue wholly and
Yeah.
has to be wholly regulated by the state. I could certainly confirm that through a conversation with OCRM.
But then we would have considered it.
Yep,
And
looked
then-
into it.
And even if we don't find any action, so that was kind of the way I took it, is because it did say consider.
Yep,
Just throw it on an agenda in a future meeting and.
okay.
So we're talking about number
17.
17.
17.
So
Okay.
we'll dig deeper into that one, and I will try to get confirmation from OCRM about whether we
Have
could
any
do anything,
jurisdiction.
even if we
Right,
wanted
'cause
to.
those are, so I'm comparing them, say, to our gazebos on beaches, which are generally, well, depending on whether you're in that overlay protection area, you could have them or not. We've zoned that is not necessarily state property, although because that's
Did
usually
we-
within
Yeah,
on property.
we require that those be outside of the state's jurisdiction in order to
Right.
just comply with our ordinance. We say, if you're beyond our regulation, you need to go talk to OCRM.
So, they're not really saying what kind of structures are at the end of the docks.
Just
Well, they-
As
just
a boat
covering
lift,
the marsh.
or just.
Yeah,
we don't
and it
have-
was, I didn't go back and look that one up, but it was, the thing was marsh protection.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So my first question is, how do those pose a threat to the marsh?
They kill the grass because they don't get the sun, literally,
Is
in
that,
some cases.
Okay.
Yeah, and I think some of them, I mean,
There are
if
some
I'm
that-
guessing what they're getting at, some have a roof, then they have multiple boat lifts, and
Sure.
they get to a point where it's a fairly large structure out there over the marsh.
oh, well, I was,
But it's-
Well,
going back to the
not over
actual
the marsh
house
if it's
part,
a-
not the boat, because like you said, that's all controlled by OCRM. So all we could look at is, and I'm thinking, well, if you got a dock with a structure on top of it, how much more damage does that do to the marsh by taking the structure off?
It's already dead.
Yeah.
Well, it's not over the marsh anyway, it's over the water.
But,
Well,
In most
Yeah, the
cases.
boat would certainly be over the water,
Yeah.
not marsh.
What's the limit, the distance it has to be from the house or the property line to be legal to have a dock?
Used
There
to
is
be
a-
1,000 feet.
Yeah, I was thinking 900 feet, that there's a max of how long they'll
Yeah.
permit. Once you get beyond that, they just won't. And it's very long.
Yeah, they only require a 4-foot dock deck going out, and everyone's a little bit different. You've got to apply to them plans and specs for what you want.
Yeah.
And they'll come back and.
You have to have,
either approve
you
it
have
or
to
not.
have surveyed and,
Yeah.
not sure if they have to have engineered plans, but surveyed.
I know
Has to be
an
done.
a surveyor used to do the full set of plans. John would do them entirely.
It used to
Without-
be where you built a dock, but they didn't care about the railing. I don't know if that's changed or not.
No,
They
you
couldn't
can
stop
go either way
you.
with the railing.
They couldn't stop you from putting up a railing.
But they also wouldn't make you put up a railing if you didn't want it,
Right.
which, like a building code would require that you do it, but we,
Your liability
And I think
insurance
it
would
has to
claim.
do also with the width of the waterway as well. You can only put such structures large enough to fit into that.
Well,
Yeah.
they used to have handicap accessible leeway for some docks that were being built, give an extra foot to get a cart up there.
But we tried that too, and they didn't buy it. They said 4 feet is your
4
max.
feet.
Max.
Yeah.
But then again, the grass grew right up through the docks.
Yeah.
I don't understand that. I don't know if really we need to delve into that at all.
I think we just did.
I was just-
I was just saying, I
was
think
like-
we got.
Let's see, the state controls this, and
It's been considered. I didn't expect it to go to, unless somebody else had.
So change that, considered ways of done.
so we'll put that, do you want to reconsider it? You
Well,
want
you're
to
gonna, just
reach out to
Reach
Mr.
out, just to make sure.
Reach out, throw it on an
Because if
agenda.
it is in our
in a
jurisdiction,
future
then we
meeting,
can
and
talk about it.
Yep.
help us feel like we're talking about something we don't know.
All right, we'll verify what we think we already
never
know.
stop.
Yeah, verify what we think we know.
How about purchasing flood-prone property to preserve and/or demonstrate conservation practices?
So, when y'all into that discussion on that one, and you kept jumping back and forth, and I was trying to follow. I kind of looked at that one as, was this the one that said low-lying areas, or was that the other
Yeah.
one?
Flood-prone property, which
Okay.
I would assume is also.
Maybe somebody
low-lying.
said low-lying areas. Would it, for the intent of this, identify potential wish list, what properties or what areas of properties would be effective for the city to try to purchase, and then put a retention pond in it in order to mitigate drainage? I think that's where the intent
I'm sure that's what that is.
was meant to. And so to me, that's really the action of it, is for us to look at, we've got the flood map, inundation charts. We could look and say, oh, be really nice if the city had that one, and we could at least be aware that if that property ever became, like I said, this, I think I went back into the green space, the city does monitor properties that are being made available and looks at purchasing them. So that would be upfront identifying if this property here, even though it's not beside the building department or the planning, if it ever became available, the city should look at purchasing it. They probably won't be able to, but that's how I took this one
I think you're right.
and that would be the action, is for, again, future date, us to actually do a little bit of research and identify those properties.
So,
Not that we could do anything,
had
we just
talked
might
about
read them.
this
Right.
last meeting. I had brought
We
it
did.
up as something that I felt needed to be in the comp plan, not this, but similar discussion. And I was asking Douglas, are there not properties that are flood prone, whether they're low lying or
Right.
not, they're flood prone, they've been hit
Yeah.
2, 3, or more, multiple times, and they probably need at some point, if they ever come available, be considered to be taken off of the tax rolls and purchased if possible. And we had talked about, there were some entities out there that perhaps could be tapped in terms of coming up with grant money
Yes.
to do this. And
There's-
that's why I was bringing it up as something to do into the comp plan. And I had kind of starred this one too for, did we put it in for consideration, or we didn't do anything,
I
or
don't-
we looked
no,
at it?
I don't think we
looking at
did,
it here?
really.
Okay.
So you're right, there is a specific FEMA grant, flood mitigation grant, that the city of Charleston's very proactively using to buy an entire neighborhood in West Ashley
Yeah.
that was permitted too low. They're buying it, they're converting it to green space and storage, flood storage space forever and ever. That is a grant that's out there. and some cities do utilize it. There is a little bit of a catch-22 in that the FEMA no longer publishes severe repetitive loss properties. That used to be a list, so that is properties that have had multiple major claims. That used to be a list that we had, and that we could reach out to those property owners specifically and talk to about these grants. I guess publicizing that list had property value implications, so they no longer publish that list. So we are kind of now blindly choosing areas that we think are flood prone. So there's a little bit of a chicken and an egg conundrum here, that we no longer know from an official list which properties have had multiple significant flood losses that have been paid out by FEMA.
I know that when I get my bill, it says no loss.
Yeah,
You look at
no
your-
prior loss.
The detail in your insurance.
But Doug
policy.
can't get a copy of that.
Yeah.
Yeah,
and I
it's
thought-
no longer
I thought
freedom,
they used
you know, it's no longer
something to have that.
available under the Freedom of Information Act, or, you know, and I guess it's
This-
been
that might-
deemed.
So we're-
that might be moot
So
to
this,
have that
So
on
if we're
there.
not talking about condemning properties, you're talking about sale of, or purchase of a sale property. But somebody, and for there to be damages that had substantial claims, it would probably have to be a house at grade. Somebody else might purchase that and make the house compliant.
We have two of those now.
Right. Well, we did
Grants
a whole
underway.
subdivision that created our whole change in lot size. That's certainly an area that is
Flood prone,
That
yeah.
probably shouldn't, you know, we didn't have the power to not allow it to be developed, but that would have been a prime property to purchase under this kind of caveat. But there's always going to be somebody who's going to figure a way around. But. yeah,
but
if we-
again, that's what I was thinking, is like at least identify them and,
Yeah.
Yeah, apparently we won't be able to identify them.
Well, I think
Oh, the price is
what
good.
David was saying was just use our inundation models.
Right.
Oh, okay.
And so it really just
Yeah.
highlights
Right.
any property that has an elevation lower than,
and that
5.
property would come kind of like as a potential flag on what they already do, to say if that property comes available, we should pursue looking.
yeah, I don't know how I can just tell you,
I agree with
Working-
Ron, chances are somebody's just gonna buy it, right,
Right.
build the lot
build
on it.
up.
Well, and
But
as
you
far
never
as,
know.
far as Trail to Point, you know, those were ideal properties to obtain that we didn't have the resources or
Yeah,
the wherewithal
I mean, y'all-
to consider.
which I learned, they acquired the number 1013, the city did.
Behind,
Behind,
many years ago.
Oh, I
Yeah,
didn't know how long ago that
Yes.
was.
Yeah.
2 lots back here, yeah,
So
10,
it's
15.
kind of under that same, we may or may not be able to get it, but at least if we identify it.
Is 10, so there's 2 lots that we've always owned. We haven't recently, I mean, there have been people interested in the final property in that block, but we have not acquired that.
No, okay, no, it's the one right,
Right next to the public safety, public works
Service.
shit.
because that tied into another one that we'll get into when we get there.
So on that one, what are we thinking kind of next?
Put it on a future agenda.
Yeah.
Do we want to try to identify just low properties, a list of low properties? I don't know realistically who at the city, if, let's just say we created a master list that had 100 properties. I would like to tell you that we could just kind of keep an eye on MLS for those 100 properties. I don't know that I can think of an ironclad system to do that now. I also don't know that the resources would be there. If something were to come up,
Yeah,
you know, I'm sure it would be at least $1 million investment. I don't know that even if it came up, we could
Do anything.
do anything. So we might find ourselves creating the list, watching MLS, it comes up, and then it would seem as though maybe the strategy would be to, and there is Greenbelt money, I mean, that money, did that get renewed, by the way? Is that gonna continue?
Good question.
Yeah, don't know.
Well,
I don't know so that was certainly a fund that we were kind of actively watching for projects that could fit within that Greenbelt.
Yeah, I mean,
But I
I-
think that went away.
I just took it as, yeah, there are probably some proactive things the city could do in that regard, being one, at least identify them, whether you send a letter to them, to all the owners saying we would be interested in purchasing your property when you want to sell it. I agree with you, I think the odds of us actually getting one of these properties is very low, but you never know.
Well, I would recommend we look into the FEMA program and
Yeah, the
find
grant
out the
that's there.
details again. I don't have a clue. I
Yeah.
just know there's different things out there that communities are able to take advantage of and work with.
I quite frankly don't know,
Let's see if it's still out there. Let's look at the Greenbelt money and funding. I think, let's ask and know. If it's not there, then maybe this is pie in the sky.
so Greenbelt,
It's probably good.
FEMA grant.
Yeah, I don't think anybody's just gonna sign
Because
up for the
everybody else is
property.
looking too.
Well.
And if you can get through those, I mean, clearly the issue is lack of funding. We just wouldn't have, we could probably identify flood-prone properties, we could probably monitor the MLS, but if it came that one of those came up for sale, I just don't know that the city would be in a position to buy it solely to just tear the house down and have it be a vacant parcel.
So, in that discussion, Sandy hit into something else that I went through my mind going through. So the launch a pilot program, oh, what was that for? Launch a pilot program for private low-impact development, storm management, and that was, again, watching through last week with some of the discussion. I think the intent behind that was, in most communities, you have a stormwater management fee, which in our stormwater management plan, we actually outline a fee, but we've never implemented it. And part of that was,
Well, we do have a fee.
Do we?
Yeah, we collect on your tax bill a stormwater fee every year.
oh,
Is that the Isle of Palms? I thought
Yeah.
that Charleston, I know the county does.
Well, that is the county fee that comes back to us.
Oh.
They run our
Oh, I-
NPDES
we-
program and have a fund that's building. So a portion of that money goes into a savings account, basically for stormwater projects.
oh.
And another portion of it goes through their program that does all the inspections for us.
So from what I remember of the discussion when we were doing which plan this came from, Sea Level Rise plan on that subject, was offering a reduction in those fees based on putting in lid components. And I think that's what this in particular had, and why I said it tied into this is that you could also apply that to, like, would somebody be willing to take an easement on their property in a low-lying area in order to receive some kind of reduction in either in taxes or something, to let the city utilize it for stormwater storage and not build on it.
That is an interesting idea. I think I understand that
So that was what I-
recommendation a little differently, but
That's what I got out
What
of
happens
it.
when they sell the house to someone else? Do they have to adhere to that?
Well, if you put an easement on it, yes.
Yeah, easement.
yeah.
So it's like, you hear people,
Yeah.
farmers doing conservation easements, so you can buy your farm, but you can't split it up.
Right.
It lowers the value of the property, for
Intention,
one,
right.
but they get tax benefits from doing that. So, yeah, if it's going, somebody selling it and is worried about capital gains, they could devaluate, basically devaluate the property by giving part of it to the, use of it to the city and still maintain ownership of it.
Yeah, with farms though, that was, if the property was sold, you didn't have a contract with the government for not growing crops.
No.
On that easement.
That's different.
That's a different one. The easement is like your right of ways
No, I
on your
understand.
property.
Yeah, you have
That
your power
stays with the
lines.
deed,
water,
even if
sewer.
you sell it, you cannot change that. It has to be a multi-party agreement to remove the restriction. So that was, again, kind of maybe a later discussion, when getting into it. That thought hit when we were in the discussion of those two items.
So my understanding of that recommendation is, there are these low-impact development tools, what would you call those? Devices, things like,
Rainforest.
rain,
A rain garden.
garden, retention, bioswales.
Yeah.
I was understanding that this would be somewhere in the community, an exhibit. Maybe it's at the rec department, maybe it's if City Hall were to be redeveloped. And we would make kind of a display of all of these things that got incorporated into that development that would be a model to the community. Hey, this is how you can
I think we
build your
talked
house.
about that, but I seem to recall we did talk about these incentives to implement low-impact development. And that's what the term private came into it is, you're basically incentivizing somebody to privately do something on their own property. Again, kind of two issues there. One is an easement. The other one would be, if I put a rain garden in my backyard, right? Would you give me a break on my stormwater management? And if I ever go and take it out, I just lose that break. There's no,
Or would it be a development capability where we, right now, I mean, you could look at our zoning code as you're allowed to cover 30% of your property at any event. If you tie it into sewer, we allow you to go to 35%. Same thing with the floor to area ratio. If you're on a septic system, you can always develop up to 30% of your lot area with finished floor. If you tie into sewer, which we all want to incentivize folks to tie into sewer,
except for me, but that's.
you get to go to 40%. I mean, that would be
That's
one.
kind of, yeah, that is one.
Another
one of the-
incentive.
It'd be another incentive like that, but, so like, yeah, if you have to retain whatever 30%, right? If you want to go up to 40%, do I reduce your permit cost?
Yeah.
Or give you some other incentive to do that? So that's what I thought. And again, it was just exploring, I didn't want to get into
Incentivize.
all of it, but I think that's where that.
So maybe does the group,
comment
instead of
came from.
launching a pilot program, which I guess maybe I'm just not fully understanding that term pilot program, I think it makes sense what you're saying, just incentivize is what
Well, I
you're-
think it was
is how you're.
doing it as a trial first, so, looking at something coming up and saying, will this work? Can I incentivize you to do this? If it works, then we would rewrite that into our our laws or whatever.
Well, I thought we had talked about even requiring that for land disturbance over 650 feet.
We do require.
Well,
that.
yeah, this was
Beyond
So
that.
this is
Beyond
beyond
that.
that.
Beyond
So if
that.
you're gonna have the minimum standard that you're gonna
Right.
you're gonna comply with. But if you
Yeah.
choose to go way up and beyond way above and beyond
Yeah.
with all these,
Some more carrots.
Yeah, that's what went through my mind when that one came up.
So I don't need a rain garden now, but if I were to put an easement on my property that it always had and needed to have going forward, a rain garden, what would be my incentive? Is kind of what you're saying, let's create.
Let's
that
create the incentive, yeah.
Incentive.
More
So I get that.
More impervious surface.
So it's kind of.
Kind of
yeah,
counterintuitive.
We had a
well,
lot of that.
But on a big scale for
Yeah.
some of the properties that maybe are existing out there.
I will tell
Future
you,
Development.
and Ron, I don't know what your experience has been on the design side, but just as kind of for what it's worth, from my perspective, this group and the recommendation to require retention on site, and if you recall, it was a third of a cubic square foot for every square foot covered.
Mhm.
I think that has been kind of community changing. I think it will ultimately be community changing. People are, and I don't know that it's terribly expensive. And I know that on the front side, people, builders hear about it and they're like, what? I have to do what? But when they really dig into it, I mean, it is creating just large
And
storage.
when you do it right, it really works.
Yep.
They're doing large on-site storage facilities that I think, when it's rolled into the construction, is relatively painless, not terribly expensive, and I think will end up being a big deal for the community as it gets redeveloped. So maybe if we can kind of build off of that, I mean, maybe there's a,
The one I was struck with is what gets back to what would be the incentive that the city could offer to get somebody, like you said, to tear out their concrete driveway and put in
yeah.
a storage and retention and all that. Yeah. But that's again what I was thinking this was leading
Yeah.
into, of us exploring how we could actually incentivize people.
Yeah, we're not, to that point, we get it with a whole house, obviously.
Yeah.
Somebody tears down and they start from scratch, that's very well planned and we're getting a little bit of, I would call it kind of, Mickey Mouse is a bad term, but somebody builds right now we have somebody building a 700 square foot pool. To do that pool, they're having to add, and I think the math is like 215 cubic feet, but it's a small retention thing that they're having to do, and they're kind of asking, I'm gonna have to have this kind of rock vault because of
Yeah.
my pool, and they do, but if there was some carrot that caused them to
Retrofit the pool.
retrofit the
storage.
entire site to deal with all of the concrete, kind of all of the existing concrete, if there was a way that we could make it worth their while to say, hey, at that offer, I'll retrofit the entire property to be
Maybe
compliant.
that works with existing properties. So for instance, I've got a client who's got a bunch of impervious surface, not a big house, but he's got two sizable driveways on his property. And he just wanted to add a garage, which now he wants to make it a porch, but it's roofed. And he's already in excess of his impervious lot coverage. But perhaps he could do that without the expense of tearing up his driveway if he could put in, enough drainage to make him whole. Let's say his.
Give him the choice of, we're not gonna make
Would
you
you tear
up your driveway
If you put
if you
in-
choose instead to
Right.
put
Right.
in these
Put in these
vaults
vaults.
that capture
Right,
more stormwater than your driveway would have shed.
right.
So the community ends up,
So who provides the information to these people? Is it the designer, the builder,
Engineer.
the city?
Yeah, well, yeah.
yeah,
I've talked with them about this because I know the ordinance.
Yeah.
And we had it confirmed with Matt and.
Because you're more involved. I would assume the normal designer doesn't, especially if they go outside the city for a design.
Yeah, that's true.
so what typically happens is they contact the city offices. City offices kind of give them, hey, here's the playbook. The architects, designers go back and they design according to the playbook, they submit it, and then your plan is checked off against the playbook.
Mhm.
And if you have discrepancies, that gets sent back to you of, hey, you missed this. So that's kind of the back and forth, but the average homeowner really doesn't know until you get deep into the weeds of of a reconstruction type project. And it really happens between somebody at kind of Ron's level and somebody at the city level.
So do you provide them information on rain gardens and all this other stuff?
We tell them this is pretty generic information. This is how you calculate what you need. These are the tools that you could do, a vault, a rock well. So very generic information is provided to them and the standard, and then they're left to figure out how to get there. And the landscape architects or the civil engineers, they're the ones that do these plans, that's their language. It makes sense to them.
And it's pretty common throughout our neighboring communities to have a plan like this. In New Jersey, apparently, they make you clean the water before it's discharged, so at least we're not
Yeah.
there yet.
So if I put 10 55-gallon drums down filled with gravel and they're connected, I have
That does it.
I have a rain garden.
That does it.
There you go.
Well, the rain garden
I can
on
draw
Palm,
that up.
the one that kept flooding, they
Paint 'em
called you
green.
about last year or the year before.
You won't see them there.
Oh, yeah.
Apparently,
Oh.
they went back and repaired it, did something to it to make it work, because it wasn't working.
So that's a whole nother story. But what they did is they dug out a pond to figure out where the groundwater level was, because they knew that that's not storage you can use. They then came above that elevation and put rock. So they found the groundwater elevation, they put a layer of rock above that to create the retention. So there was a process they were going through to find the groundwater elevation, which was kind of a weird thing to watch. But I think by there are events that just overwhelm everything. They overwhelm massive drains, but I think by most accounts, those owners consider that a huge success, where they were getting water standing in their yard, coming into their house after kind of routine storms. They no longer have that. So they've been
I
very
think they put more
pleased.
money into the surroundings than the house is worth.
Yeah, it was not cheap.
So you said barrels, so rain barrels are actually a lid thing. So if you drain your gutter into a big 55-gallon drum, and then you put like a small 1/4-inch hole, so it retains the initial flow, and then it slowly lets it leak out over the next couple of days, that's one of these LID.
Form.
We have that in our house.
forms.
And you get
That's-
thinking
55 gallons of credit, whatever that cubic foot.
Right.
Yeah.
We have that set up, we just haven't put the barrels in, because the barrels are like 20 grand.
Well, no, you can get the.
The black, he's talking about the black $100.
Yeah, you can get the cheap ones.
Black
The cheap
plastic ones.
plastic.
You're talking about the underground.
No,
No, the
everything, all the
ground.
whole
Yeah.
sewer, the drainage system all goes down to a central point, and they just didn't put the barrels in.
Oh,
And then when I priced it out, I said, the hell with that. Let it just
Yeah.
go where it's supposed to go. But it's an interesting system.
yeah.
I mean, some people use it to water their lawn.
Yeah.
So there's, but you're,
That's the
the
great.
whole process, you're
Yes.
retaining it on your property as opposed to.
A lot of this is in that sea level adaptation plan too.
So that.
That
might be-
is from that one, I think, right?
Yeah.
Well, there's a.
We don't have the column of where each of these came on your printout, but I think that one is from the sea
But
level
it's
one.
addressed, yeah, I was gonna say, it's
Maybe the
addressed
city
in the
offers
sea
rain
level.
barrels free to people who want to install them. I don't know.
There you go.
Yeah.
And
you gotta
then
do the
get your
gutters.
credits.
Huh?
Then you gotta do the gutter system.
Well, if you already have the gutters, then it'd be worth it.
All right, so that's another one for future.
Future discussions.
Is that yellow for future? Is that what we're doing?
I think we're gonna leave it until we have that future
To be
discussion.
determined.
But we're not considering a pool or rain garden.
No.
Unless it's empty all the time.
Right?
I've got 12 inches leeway.
Yeah, there was a,
Mhm.
if you recall that, and it may be that the planning commission, that went down a rabbit hole quickly, but the planning commission, I think, recognized that there is a certain capacity in an average pool that it's actually holding rainwater.
Mhm.
The point was made, I think, at the council level, that they are not all holding the water, and some are designed where almost every drop that comes in ended up going out. And I guess, and I don't know if that's the disappearing edge ones or, so there was not an exact science of how much capacity, but the point was made, they don't capture unlimited rain. At some
Right.
point, it becomes
But to his,
full and then it's pouring out.
to-
But I do think the planning commission said, you know what, they shouldn't be counted because they're holding more than they're not. But that got overturned at a higher level, and it's in the code that they are counted as impervious. But there's a pretty active debate over that
so
question.
let me ask you, based on what he was saying, is, so when your engineer does your calculation, can he use that
No,
as storage?
no.
Why not?
Because it's only storing the rain that comes into the pool.
No, he's saying actually, you're saying actually route the rain into it?
You
Right.
could.
Well, not, yeah, I guess that would be the.
Route
Yeah.
like gutters into your pool?
Yeah, I don't think we want to do that.
Yeah,
I would
I was
wanna
gonna
do
say,
that.
no,
So
you
no,
don't.
that
I always want a black pool in a day.
No.
No, it's gotta be an in-ground pool to really have an effect of capturing the water. Elevated pools aren't gonna do it. It only captures what was hit it.
Well, even most in-ground people, like I said, they're
They're
sloping
slopes,
away.
the water
Sloping
goes
away
away.
from the pool.
Yeah.
Yeah, I think the last storm, my neighbors filled in, overflowed and ran it.
I would say that a pool's not impervious, that they do absorb it, and they do, I'm speaking
Retain
of
some
mine
amount.
specifically, has an overflow mechanism
Right.
that allows it to percolate
Perk
out and not
Right.
flood and run off. I think of impervious as it hits here and it's running off.
So
It
this,
lands in my pool and is allowed to leak out at a very slow rate
Right.
versus a
And so you-
flooding effect of a concrete
Right.
entity.
You could figure out that volume of water, depending on where your water table of your pool is versus the coping.
Yeah.
Because arguably all that rainwater could make up the difference. And then, yes, your overflow would leach that out
Where does it overflow?
into the yard, just the same as the rain garden.
Wherever, it's overflowing, something that's underwater.
But it's percolating.
That's
Well, the big
Parking
part of
no
that
different
is,
than your rain garden.
it holds it temporarily so that you're not inundating the yard.
Right.
So if you release it over the next 2 or 3 hours after the rain stops,
Yep.
then the ground can absorb most of it as opposed to,
Your roof system, which is running it off, the pool does not run it off like a roof. It holds it and you're able to, it kind of percolates out at a much slower rate than the roof is allowing it to drain, if you will.
yeah,
Anyway.
this
Anyway,
proved to be,
We went down a
Yeah.
real deep rabbit hole.
this one was a little bit beat to death.
and I think on
Came out.
simplicity's sake, it was like either count or don't
Yeah.
count.
I think that's,
And since
We
you
were
can't
just
control.
doing number 19. We were reassessing the
Yeah.
ordinance on
Yeah.
imperviousness.
There you go.
Runoff is like the divot story in PGA.
Oh, we're done. Yeah, check that one off.
so
Next one.
so we've been an hour. You all feel like, and I feel like we've got a ton of notes, a ton of changes. You feel like we've done enough for a day?
I think so.
I guess,
And you don't, and I will say that you all are now, well ahead of all of the other committees in their
What do we
pages.
have not?
Well, did we talk about,
I mean, there's a lot we still haven't talked about, but I would say if you talk about every one of them, we'll be here till.
we did
Right, I
discuss
was
about the
just trying to
CRS rating. Didn't we do that a couple of meetings ago?
Which one, Suzanne?
The
Number
CRS rating?
14.
Yes.
Is it
14.
Yeah, that one should be marked off.
Well, I think that, to me, that's kind of always an aspirational.
Well, that goes
We
back
have
into.
done that.
It's in the
It's to
comp plan,
maintain our
so,
current process. We have a
Yeah.
process to reevaluate that every time y'all have to renew it.
Well, pursue improving the rating when feasible.
so we're back
It's
on the
full.
green category. It is, it's in the
I
comp
think it's
plan.
green,
Mhm.
yeah.
Great,
Yeah.
we do this.
We
We
do.
would always just do this, is the point.
Yes, and we had a discussion about it, I think, which is when we were reviewing the comp plan and it came up.
Yeah.
And we left it in there because it's an ongoing process.
Ongoing, kind of
But there is
maintenance.
a process in place
Yeah.
to do it.
Yeah, okay.
So
Not
it's
that
a
we're
ma-
not gonna pursue,
So it's a
It's-
maintenance,
it's
just
a
keep
maintenance.
doing what you're doing
Yeah.
and we'll leave it there.
Just keep doing what you do.
Nice, knocked out another one.
See, I told you I could have done that one fast.
all right, I think that's enough.
You're not wearing a suit, you want to get out of here, I understand.
He's had a long day.
An hour's good.
Go ahead,
Hours
do it,
is-
do it.
Or else we'll just go
Do it.
down a rabbit hole.
We'll start down rabbit holes, you can see it coming.
Are you talking
I
about
won't get
trees?
into the tree, no. we're
Oh,
not.
we
That would
talked
be-
about the trees last time,
We
though.
did.
The bike path, when y'all were discussing that and then you were talking about the property is, would it, just for people to think, would it be feasible to have bikes come off the connector down 13th Avenue, cut through behind the thing and build a boardwalk to connect underneath the connector to 21st Avenue, down the easement?
So I
that
would say that's an interesting question, and we have actually,
There is
Looked.
there is an easement in there.
Mm-hmm.
And whether it's an elevated easement to make it a path,
I do not believe you have the headroom
that's.
right at the, go back, because we actually
Oh, okay.
looked at doing, not exactly that. But we looked into whether you could connect across,
Mhm.
and it's very low over the highland, unless you went out, you could do kind of
I
a
think
dock.
we had talked about like a roadway, but if
Mm-hmm.
you're doing a, you know, like, yeah, a dock, a
If it were a
elevated,
dock, I think you could do it.
bike path could, and that tied into the second one. That was just a thought for people to think of is,
We have always thought,
Mm-hmm.
especially those of us that have an office right here next to
Yeah.
it, that would be very cool if we could avoid, this
Connect with
intersection.
Bond Boulevard.
Yeah, kind of interconnect behind. But David, you're gonna have to take your snake boots and your machete
Mhm.
and your camera out there and your tape measure to figure out, I think if you do a dock, it's possible. I think that we were hoping that we could just do it over land.
Yeah.
And we couldn't do it.
and I
But it
think
would have to go
before,
out.
you were looking at vehicle traffic, weren't you, or,
Well, us personally, we're looking at any which way we could do it.
yeah.
Mm-hmm.
But yeah, okay, just a thought.
That could be your homework.
I don't want to go.
It's actually, they just have cleared it.
Cleared it, so.
Yeah, they have just done the water system overflow, reverse osmosis overflow, has
Oh.
just gone out there, so it's actually
Not
very
too
clear.
bad. I can put on my snake boots and
Then
go.
we can take out those two bike lanes and make one on one side, and then we're done, they're gonna, IOP connector back.
There you
I'll
go.
look at it. If you don't want to go, if you don't want to.
I'm curious.
I
got
thought
some
you might be.
rainbows.
All right. I think that's
it.
That's good work.
For tonight?
Thank you,
Do we
Greg.
have a motion to adjourn from Sandy?
Yes, yeah.
In a second?
Aye.
Don't